So hey everybody, thank you for joining our 6th steering committee meeting of the IGF-USA 2021 planning cycle. Hopefully this won't be that long of a meeting. We're kind of in between milestones at this point, so I'm hoping I can yield back time when I'm actually yielding back time and not when we're actually over time. So we're going to run through some conference logistics, talk about some outreach and promotion, a little bit of a fundraising update, and then discuss the next steps for session planning teams and close out with a lightning round of updates from the session planning teams. I think for the most part, like I mentioned, we're in between milestones here. So the updates probably, if your group doesn't have a concrete update, that's okay. At this point, it's really the next meeting where we'll be asking everything of you. So so let's get to it. If you could all just introduce yourselves in the chat, that would be great, and then we will just jump right in. So let me, it was sent out an email, but just so you have it, pasting a link to the agenda, and documents can also be referenced on this page as well. So for the conference logistics, we'll start off by discussing our lead-in event, which last year we had a great IGF-USA pre-event with Pew Research Foundation led by Lee Rainey, and we're planning to do that again. It's scheduled for June 23rd from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to include a lot of data that they've pulled together on tech and internet adoption and how that's changed over the years, and then include elements of their new normal in 2025 expert panel that they pulled together earlier this year. And so hopefully it will have a broad enough application that it's useful and can tie in some ways to a lot of the issues that we're preparing sessions on. So just keep that in mind as something that you can put on your calendar and think about how, if there are any particular elements within those parameters that your session would like to see Lee place more emphasis on, because obviously Pew has so much data. There's really no way that we're going to fit it into the allotted time. So anything that we can do to provide him with more direction and make it more applicable to the conference is a good thing. If you have thoughts on that now, we'll open it up, but if not, in the next few meetings that you have, start to think about that. And if not, want to move into a discussion about scheduling our sessions, and we can kind of roll this into a conversation around keynotes as well. So generally speaking, the way we've done, there are two types of keynotes that we've done in the past. The introductory, or I suppose closing keynote, although at our last meeting, I think we all agreed that we didn't want a closing keynote. So do the other type of keynote would be those that kick off a session and take the first 10 to 15 minutes. So we'll get to those session related keynotes in a second, but what do you all think about trying to have somebody provide an introductory keynote, and if so, are there any thoughts on who that should be?
I'm always a fan of Pew if they have anything recent, and they usually are willing to do something for the conference because their stuff is so good and it's a great table setting exercise for the whole conference. But I haven't talked, I don't know Lee. I don't know if anybody's talked to Lee recently.
Well, I'm sure that he would be willing to do it, you know, considering that he's willing to do the pre-event. He's always happy to jump in there. So, I'm almost positive that he would say yes if we asked him to kind of kick it off.
Just a thought. Or even if they,
I love Lee, but I kind of would like to see somebody who's never been to an IGF-USA and maybe even somebody who's kind of new to the game, or who doesn't do a lot of keynote speeches. I would love to, I mean, I would love to aim high and, you know, let's go get Mark Benioff from Salesforce, or there's a guy who works for him, Peter Schwartz, who's been helping design the future for 40 years. He's kind of the senior VP for the future. I have a bias there, I admit that. But he doesn't do a lot of talks in Washington because he's in the Bay Area, but he's been at this for a long time. So he has a lot of thoughts on how the technology shapes society and vice versa. But I mean, is there a CEO that would like to hear from? Or maybe an ex-CEO who could just lay it out there and say, this is what's really going on. I mean,
I think I like that. I was thinking the same thing, Mike, in generically. This is an opportunity to have someone who is thoughtful, visionary, cares, and is less interested in the specifics of how we might be organizing the internet and governance, but more into the compelling things that we need to think about.
well, it's like, what's it like to be on the receiving end of
Exactly.
some of the rules that are coming at us? I mean, I'm just going to throw out some crazy ideas and it'll spark better ideas. Steve Case is still very much engaged. He's all about getting the rest of the country engaged in technology, not just Silicon Valley, Boston, Washington, Austin.
Steve
Always interesting. And again, you know, he's been at it for a while.
He has a bus tour too, Mike.
I know.
So that
Well, as I said, I mean, we tend to, the strongest accusation against us is that we are inside the Beltway conference for inside the Beltway people. And having a discussion about what does it take to get every county engaged would be kind of interesting.
Steve would be very interesting because he has the full scope of just about every aspect. But he's also done visionary things. He's gone up, he's gone down, he's thinking ahead. He's a thinker.
Part of the greatest and worst merger of all time, too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the stories he could tell if he was willing to tell them.
you can ask how he feels about getting undersold from your previous number by not being part of it anymore. And is that part of the success story of AOL?
Yeah, exactly. No, but I think that's a good place to start, though, Mike. I mean, because he has that bus tour, he's all over the place, and lessons learned from the heartland, what he's hearing, because he is looking at these smaller towns and what's going on.
And traditionally, I mean, I don't know him today, but he's been a straight shooter.
Yeah. Well, the straightest shooter would be Mark Cuban, but I don't think we want necessarily.
That's a different
league. And it wouldn't stay on internet, and certainly wouldn't stay on internet governance. But somebody outrageous is somebody. I mean, I'm trying to think of who else would be.
Although Mark Cuban bring a lot of people to the.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And our friends at Verizon have a very good relationship with him.
Anybody else, any other companies that come to mind? Jenny Remedi, the former head of IBM, has some spare time now. And again, global company.
That actually, that it could be a very, because the thoughtful person is a good speaker. And certainly knows the landscape. Has nothing to lose by being outrageous.
And I have a couple ways to reach her. I don't know if anybody else has connections.
Yeah, I think we could reach you.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a good start, and I think if we were able to get any of the people that were suggested so far, it would probably be a good thing for us. So
and Dustin, we could do a pre-recorded opening keynote, right? We don't need a Q&A.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. No, that'd have to be
A lot of
pre-recorded.
flexibility.
Well, no, I mean, not necessarily. Sometimes if they want to do a Q&A and get some real press coverage, that would be a.
Well, I was thinking the speech is pre-recorded, but then they're live for the press.
well, if the preference
It's a
would be
virtual
for it
conference.
to not be pre-recorded, but if that were the only option, then
Yeah,
I
but
think
if
that
you,
would
if
be
you do
okay.
pre-recorded, it's 8 minutes. Boom. You don't give people 20 minutes of a video. But then if you wanted to do pre-recorded, we could do two yin and yang, two different views. I mean, two different backgrounds. But I'd much prefer to do this live, and that would be certainly more exciting for the speaker.
Yeah. And we're starting late enough in the day that it's not going to be a big issue for the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
As one who worked with Tom, I don't know if that would be a good idea.
We don't want to get a foreign perspective, do we? Get a view from Canada?
Probably not as the opening keynote.
Yeah, that's true.
For IGF-USA.
I mean, again, it's the outside perspective. One of the best talks I heard on what America needs to do was from the former president of Estonia, Thomas Ilves, who now lives in Stanford. And to hear him describe e-commerce and the digital infrastructure of Silicon Valley is like hearing someone describe 2005. It's compared to Estonia. He's really very blunt about it. Just he can't believe how we haven't done some of the basic simple things that Estonia did 10 years ago. But I'm not proposing that. He actually, for the digital identity session, he might actually be a good opener.
Actually, he'd be very good for that, Mike.
Yeah, and he loves to talk about it because he's really done something important there.
Yeah, no, have for the digital identity, have people read the stuff that there's some new stuff that eBay, was it eBay or others have been putting out on digital identity? Because it's picking up in the US as being a very important topic.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why we're having a panel on it.
That's why I'm doing it. All right. Well, I mean, this is not the last time we'll talk about it. If you kind of, we've got the brains working now. Keep thinking about it and let us know so we can start reaching out.
Well, is there any objection to if Steve Case is kind of the first choice or the former CEO of IBM is our first choice? Because we kind of have to start now, I would guess.
Yes.
So if there's any objection, obviously you would do one first and then not ask both. And if there's a conflict, and they both say yes, which would be good.
I mean, I would not be uncomfortable asking both and finding room for both.
Yeah, if they both say yes.
Yeah, we
And
can
the
do
odds are 1 in
each day.
10 that we're going to get one.
Yeah, if
The
that.
odds that we
Right.
get both is approximately 1 in 100 then, but
Yeah, and we have a 2-day event, so we
Yeah.
could manage that luxury problem.
But I think both are really good recommendations. So why don't we,
Yeah.
I mean, unless anyone has objections, why don't we start, whoever has that connection, if someone could put in the chat that they can reach out to you, either one of those people, whoever's first gets to reach out, who has a good connection. It's not me, so.
yeah, and my best connection is now too busy to answer his email. Ron Klain was very, very tight with Case for a long time, but he's kind of busy right now.
A little bit, yeah.
But I think I probably have some other ways to reach him, but Jenny Rometty, I can definitely get an invitation to.
Okay. No objections here to,
Perfect,
okay,
great.
cool. So,
Just one question. What about Tim Wu? Is he interested? Would he be fit in this session as a keynote speaker?
Well, probably not, would be my inclination. And I don't know how free he's going to be able to speak is the reason I say that.
Yeah, because he's with the State Department now, isn't he?
No, he's at the White House, I think.
White House, okay.
The White House, yeah, but I don't know
But
that,
it's also, this is a keynote for the whole
yeah,
conference, not for one layer of the stack and antitrust and, yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, so I think let's start with Jeannie and Steve and figure out where we're at from there. And so getting into the scheduling, I'm going to drop this link so everybody can kind of look at kind of straw man layout of what it could look like.
Before we leave keynotes, let me throw one more out there. Reid Hoffman is just amazing as a speaker.
He's a good speaker.
He
Yeah.
is very good, and he hasn't been overexposed in Washington. I mean, he's very much about, you know, how he built LinkedIn and how we build connections for people. I mean, it would be an interesting, guaranteed to be an interesting talk, and would also focus a lot on what the internet has enabled over the last 20 years.
Yeah, he's a very good speaker and very articulate
Yeah.
as well.
And now he's involved with all sorts of companies. So he brings stories
Exactly.
from all these different companies, both of positive government role and
Mhm.
places where the government shouldn't have had a role but tried to, and other places where it had
Yeah,
a negative impact. So
and he's qualitative in
Yeah.
his discussions. He's thinking about the implications of things,
yeah,
and he's done a lot of thinking. I mean, I've heard him. He's very good.
yeah.
Where-
But
where-
I haven't seen him kind of speaking at Washington conferences or so.
I was going to ask. I've never heard of him speaking here.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen him on he certainly doesn't show up for think tank events.
Yeah,
But this would be a chance for him to talk to a larger audience. And he only has 2.4 million followers on LinkedIn. I'm directly connected to him. I know him.
No opposition here. Maybe start with 2 and then move on from
Yep.
there.
Yep.
But the Reid is another example. If we had all 3 except, we'd have spaces for them.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen, but let's start with 2.
All right. So
Could I just add, I'm wondering what kind of messages that send to have a corporate keynote? You know, I would think more an NGO type keynote would be appropriate. You know, within the forum of this group.
Yeah, all government. We had government keynotes.
I mean,
We've not had
particularly,
a private.
If you look at the whole program in the past, it's the corporate, the business side is underrepresented.
well, I think that's fine on the panels, but as a keynote to, for example, have IBM, that just comes off as this is an IBM event.
Not if she's ex-IBM.
That's the key. She's ex-IBM and she's speaking for her knowledge, not for IBM.
Okay, well, I think we all get that you all are, you've got those suggestions. I'm just throwing out there that my reaction to that is, is it necessary out of all the kind of NGO kind of people there must be out there to have corporate kind of co-op the keynote spot?
I wouldn't call it co-opting.
Yeah. I guess that the idea that just because someone's from corporate, that it's a sinister thing, I think that may be one of the reasons they're underrepresented, but.
I don't think it's
We're looking for-
sinister, but
we're
I
looking
do,
for perspective.
yeah. I don't know, I'd like to hear other folks. I would like to keep
Well,
the,
I mean,
option open and not
so-
just go ahead and push this through.
Well, we do need to start reaching out to people soon. And I mean, there's been plenty of opportunity for people to speak up. It's an open floor. And, we did just reach more or less a consensus on reaching out to Steve Case and Ginny Rometty to see if we can get them. And, I certainly value your input. And if you have a suggestion on somebody that you would like to see thrown into the mix, I'm willing to listen to that and hear the arguments for that person.
Yeah, I've a couple times mentioned Shoshana Zuboff. I think she's an outside voice, outside independent thinker in this regard. So it's not that I haven't made suggestions.
Well, we're also having, I've heard that suggestion also in the context of different panels as well. So it's not like there's one keynote slot for the entire conference. It's the opening keynote.
And
Just to be a little clear on where I'm coming from. We're trying to bring new audiences to this event. Would love to get more press to the event. Having a name that everyone's heard and somebody who touches almost every aspect of the industry is what I was after. And academics and NGOs focus on one piece of the puzzle. That's how they make their name. That's what they're known for. And that's why I would argue instead, let's go for somebody who's done it all, right? And there's a few people, there's a few government people who then, some of whom went to business. My former boss, Al Gore, would be an example of somebody who was a politician who then got involved in business. And Lord knows he was dealing with all aspects of tech policy, but that was a long time ago. We don't have people like that now, but I can't think of an NGO leader who has had an impact on 7, 8, 10 different aspects of tech policy. And the corporate CEOs do.
And as Mike indicated, Shoshana is indicative of someone who has a particular point of view, as opposed to a more balanced perspective that we would get from a Rometty or from Case. So I don't think Shoshana makes any sense as a keynote, although she'd be quite lively to have on a panel.
I don't even know we can get her on a panel. My understanding is she gets speaking fees for everything.
Yeah.
Well,
But I agree.
okay, it
She's a
seems
very,
like a done
she's a very
deal. I
good
give up.
speaker on the topic she speaks on, but
If I could just speak, it seems like a done deal. I give up.
and I suggested those names off the top of my head 30 minutes ago. There was no done deal. This was not something where, this was a brainstorming session, and it sounded like people thought those were good ideas.
I don't know where you're coming from, but I'm saying it sounds like it's a done deal. So I will.
Nothing's done here.
Exceed.
No one's actually, I don't understand. And I think Shoshana is amazing. I'd love to be part of her book club. I've read her book. I can't say I've read the entire thing. It's a tome, but I think we need to be open to ideas. I love the idea of Steve Case in that I don't know what he's done recently, but he was way ahead of the power curve on getting tech out of Silicon Valley and going to Detroit and going to New Orleans and really putting, the idea in people's heads that before the pandemic, we can do this. We can do this, and and people were starting to move back to their hometowns where they felt like they could, they could afford to have a family. So I thought he had a very good message, and I remember that. Gosh, what, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
I don't know where it is now, but I think he would have a whole lot of proof points that he was on track. And he is local-ish. I don't know where I know he's sometimes here. I don't know if he's here all the time. So I just think that's a really good suggestion. I don't have any contacts with him, but I think that if we, can follow up on that and don't feel disparaged here. People are just throwing ideas out. I mean, we got to kind of go at a lot of stuff because it takes it takes a while to get somebody to come in on this. So
yeah, well, and we're aiming very high, and we probably won't get the people we've mentioned, but I think it's good to have.
Don't be a doubter.
Well, I'll try as hard as I can, and we'll get some other people to do the same.
Yeah, I like the idea of Steve Case because I think he has moved into, a more eleemosynary kind of endeavor from his perspective. I would have no interest in seeing Gina Rometty.
If it's one of the first times she's spoken publicly since being CEO, it could get a lot of attention.
Okay, guys, can we move on?
Yeah, I was just gonna say we're falling off of our agenda here a little bit, but we'll start out with the 3 that we've mentioned. We'll get a status on those and come back for more if need be.
All right. So back to the scheduling of the sessions. I posted the link to a spreadsheet in the chat for, I don't know if anybody has joined since I posted that, so I'll just post it again really quickly. So we have 9 sessions that we need to spread out over 2 days. As we previously mentioned, the default time is 75 minutes, and it would probably be hard to accommodate more than 3 sessions that reach the 90-minute mark, but we are open to extending the length of sessions that have requested it. So far, those requests have come from, I believe, the digital identity session, the privacy session, partially the building better online markets and community session, although we would kind of like build a break in the middle of that. So it's not purely a 90-minute session. And then Melinda, I think you mentioned that possibly the security session.
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to on the security session, but it's going to depend on if the appointment process and if there's somebody who could come in and speak to it at a keynote level or not.
Okay. And then I think that the privacy and digital identity requests were on not necessarily tied to a keynote as much as wanting a little bit of additional time to build out the discussion a little bit. Is there anyone else from a different session who was part of a discussion about proposing that they get the 90 minutes? Okay, so
Hey, Sean, I was in and out on different meetings, and I heard something about keynotes. So just throw that out and put it out there. If anybody needs a formal federal CIO to be the keynote, both of them.
Sorry, Charles, we need to move on from the keynote discussion.
Okay.
thank you though. If you want to drop a suggestion in the chat, that would be helpful. But I'm taking the silence on the additional time as a no. So what I would propose is that based on how we've traditionally approached what's the equivalent of a plenary, if I guess the first pass would for those 90-minute sessions would go to allocating additional time for a keynote. And then the, you know, for example, if the security session doesn't get the keynote that they're looking for and is fine with the 75 minutes, then we could move on and allocate that additional time to the digital identity and privacy sessions. Does that process generally make sense to everybody?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Steve. And then you'll notice that sessions have been placed on certain days. These aren't really binding. They just, when we were talking about how it seemed to make sense from the flow of content, we just kind of put them in this order. And so if you have a particular request for a particular time slot, especially as you start securing speakers, the sooner that we can know that and lock something in, the better. I think that outside of the opening and closing sessions, I think we could pretty easily move everything around within the 2 days. And so for the opening and closing sessions, we were thinking the one focused on the future of online markets and communities, and the one focused on regulatory changes and potential fragmenting of the internet. Are there any other topics that we should be considering for the opening or closing sessions?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Dustin? Which ones were you thinking? Sorry.
The future of online markets and communities, and the regulatory changes and potential fragmenting of the internet.
Right, so we'd go from the keynote, you know, a big market picture, to go into the future of the markets, online markets, and those panels, and that, well, not necessarily panels.
Were those keynotes for the future of the markets? They were more of those, what was the term you used, fast or something? Or was like that?
Lightning talks.
Lightning, is that what we're talking as our I was doing air quotes, but I'm not on camera, so you can't see them. But our keynote, did we want to do one for, I mean, we haven't talked about this, but for the security sort of supply chain, because that's becoming such a hot topic. Do we want to have a keynote for that one? Or is that, we're just gonna do a panel for that, Melinda?
Yeah, that was the previous discussion, that we would have these sort of lead-in keynotes. Let's call them, you know, keynote -1 almost. Those are the ones that Dustin had mentioned before, the identity, privacy, and then potentially security. Yeah.
All right,
and then those would become 90-minute sessions in total when you add in that lead-in.
Got it. Thank you.
But also each session is can do whatever they want with their time. So any session can kick off with a 10 to 15 minute keynote or introductory remarks or anything like that. But do the 2 sessions that we have, opening and or closing the conference, seem like the right ones?
You know, especially if we do scenarios for the fragmentation session. I think that would be a particularly interesting, fun way to close it out, because we've talked about a lot of upsides and downsides for 2 days, and we get to the end of the second day and say, where will we be in 5 years? So I think I like where Rick's going with that in the scenario. So let's stick with it.
Okay.
Yeah, and for folks that what we mean by these scenarios, they're really going to touch on a lot of the different topics that are going to be presented throughout the day, the 2 days.
Yeah, I like that idea because we don't have to do an explanation beforehand. Because if you've been watching them, you kind of already have the scenarios make more sense than doing them pre. So see, I like that idea of doing it last.
Okay, cool. So let's consider those sessions kind of set as the opening and closing, and then all of the sessions in between that can be moved around based on scheduling logistics for speakers or preferred time slots or anything like that. I know in the past, some people have wanted certain topics to be earlier in the morning so that they reach a European audience, for example, or later so that they reach our friends in Hawaii, especially as we talk about things like access. So, so feel free to make those requests. That'll be one of the things that we are asking of the different planning committees moving forward. And then that moves us to a discussion of the auxiliary platforms. So we will more than likely stick with Zoom for the kind of core programming. And we have several different platforms we're exploring, and that the fund committee will kind of determine where and what we use for the coffee breaks and the lobby and happy hours and things like that. But we're also looking at something that provides a better chat function than Zoom, so that resources that are shared don't have to be reposted constantly, and the chat doesn't disappear when you disconnect, and we can kind of keep the conversations going. So we were considering potentially using Slack. Are there any other ideas of something that might provide a good supplement?
And the other consideration here is that not everyone uses Zoom. Some people will follow via live stream. And we hope to offer that option, or maybe YouTube. So, obviously those folks don't have the benefit of seeing a Zoom chat.
I want to suggest Lumio. I have a problem with Slack in that the notifications always fail me and I never get them, but the Lumio notifications seem to work. And it doesn't require me to have the app on my phone. So I'm planning to plug into Lumio, which I like.
Okay, we'll put some research into that and see how
Yeah, Jonathan,
it plays.
and they'll give us a free, they gave Jonathan Juckdad a free trial for several months, and it was great. And Jonathan, you can speak on that too.
Sure. Lumio is an open source project that actually came out of the Occupy movement, I think, initially. But it's nice. It's got all the functionality of a Slack in terms of threaded discussions and things, but it also has features for built-in polling and things and interactions. So it could end up having a broader use, but it's got the resource section and the threaded conversations like Slack. but it's has some other functionality, interactive functionality as well. That's interesting.
Yeah, I remember Jonathan talking to you when you were first exploring it, but I don't think I got the report out on what you thought of it. Maybe we could find a time with Yumi and anyone else that would be interested to
yeah, happy to
explore
talk it
that.
out. One of the nice things is that you can engage in the threaded conversations via your email client, and they still stay within those threads. So you don't have all these broken threads the way you do normally in email. And so it has like a very smooth integration with your email, which is nice.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's find a time. I'd be interested in seeing a demo of that.
Yeah, and they seem to be very willing. They gave us a very long trial period. So.
Okay.
At least
cool.
Jonathan convinced him to.
No, that's great. I appreciate that suggestion. So we'll look into that as well. Any other platforms we should be looking at? Okay, so do some research into Lumio. So moving on, thinking about outreach and promotion here. You know, obviously there's a lot of talk about us wanting to reach new audiences. That's always been a goal. Being virtual makes that goal more attainable. And so we just wanted to open this up to different ideas of how we can improve our outreach and promotion. You know, we're already doing mailing list promotions across multiple mailing lists, social media, of course, and, you know, asking some of our kind of usual suspects and friends to help spread the word as well. And then once we start to secure speakers and all of that, we ask them to help promote. Last year, we put out, Melinda wrote up a blog and put it in Circle ID, but you know, it's still kind of within the industry. So are there any ideas for how we can better reach a wider audience with our promotional strategy?
Let me give you a more specific ask to help point you a little bit, because I know that was a pretty big broad ask that we're at, that we've given you. So Dustin had mentioned Circle ID. So think about, you know, the specific panels that you're helping to pull together in the sessions and that topic, right? Let's use digital identity, right? What are there, you know, blogs, you know, e-magazines, you know, the equivalent of like a Circle ID in the DNS space, where people go to, but that are in that space, the companies, the academics, you know, what are those equivalents of like a Circle ID for the different topics, whether it's antitrust, whatever they might be. If you can let us know that can help us then target either with, you know, a little bit of paid advertising, or we could do, we're willing to do the longer form blog to discuss in a little more detail the session that's coming up to Drain, to get some traction there.
I don't know what it costs. Steve probably does, or others who actually have marketing budgets, but you know, Politico and Protocol, you know, have their daily newsletters, and you can buy little ads in those. When you talk about our targeted audience, I don't know how expensive those are, but that would be an interesting place because it's a daily, you know, and they're spread pretty far. We can pick the ones that are relevant to our panels or however we want to work it. You know, they have one on fintech, and across the board. I just don't know what the cost of something like that. Maybe somebody on this call does. Back in the day, I probably would have known, but I don't know.
I know about 2 years ago, it can be expensive, but it might be doable. I'd have to see where they are, how much they've changed in 2.5 years.
Well, I don't know if this is inappropriate, but here's a question. Maybe, you tend to have some very large companies who sponsor, and maybe we could ask one of the companies, because a double for them to sponsor it, and then they can put, as a sponsor. I don't know if that's appropriate or not. It won't, but I just throw that out there as an idea to help.
Yeah, I mean, we do have other facets of the program that are sponsored, so I don't find that particularly troubling. All right, well,
Yeah,
again, just keep this as part of your homework as you're working on the sessions, and if you're thinking about something that's relevant, push it our way. We'll do the work to spread the word in these different sectors.
And Shane said she wanted to be in a Jonathan Zuck production, so maybe this is the opportunity to combine her acting skills with Jonathan's director skills to have an amazing IGF-USA video.
I'm in if he is.
It'd be an honor to have you star in one of my productions, Shane.
I think my foot was in one once or something. I mean, so I realize I've had my moment.
All right, so just moving quickly to quick fundraising update here. Just pulling up our latest. So we currently have asks out for about 56,000, and then we've had 21,750 committed so far this year, and so we'll keep you updated on that. If there are any new sponsors that you can think of that might be worth reaching out to, that's always welcome as well.
How much do we have committed? I missed the number.
21,750.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. Hopefully still more to come, but a good start.
Thank you. Several of you are on the call today. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So yeah, we've I guess it's okay to say who we've had confirmed because it's all public. So we have confirmed sponsorships so far from VeriSign, PIR, Lumen, ICANN, and the Internet Society so far, with more outreach kind of outstanding. So more updates to come at the next meeting on that.
Have we had media sponsors contribute much in the past? I mean, people doing media for us, not giving us dollars.
Oh, yes. So we actually, I don't know if John Perino is on, but the Glen Echo Group has offered to help us with some of that outreach this year and help with kind of how we package up our content for social media and all of that. So there's some in-kind sponsorship there as well.
Excellent.
Jim, is Donuts going to do the captioning again? Because it was in Phileas.
Donuts, love to.
Okay, we got Donuts on for the captioning. Okay, Dustin, for the done.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Jim.
Got it. Thanks, Jim.
Do we have like what you get for your sponsorship, or is it just we'll take whatever you have and you get? Is there like sort of a?
So there
levels of
are
sponsorship or things like that.
Yeah, and I also should mentioned that obviously you've graciously sponsored the or offered to sponsor the kind of closing cocktail or however that comes out. So thank you for that as well. So there are some like was just mentioned, Donut sponsors the captioning. There has been a sponsoring of the coffee break in the past, like in addition to the sponsorship, providing like branded cups and stuff like that helps us keep those costs down. And so but the kind of general benefits are the the mentions in the program, the recognition on the website and newsletters and things like that.
They get to invite as many people as they want, right? No, just-
And we have
as many free tickets as they
as
want.
many free tickets you want. And there's also a spot in the program for literature.
Right.
So brochures or short papers, things of that nature that if the sponsor wants to contribute.
It's like a virtual policy paper table.
Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of brings us into the last part of our discussion here on the next steps for the session planning teams. So the big deadline for the teams is May 27th. So you got about 3 weeks here. And by then we would like to have any changes to the titles finalized, descriptions submitted so that we can build out the web page for each session. And then also by then, ideally, you have a good number of speakers confirmed. We understand that obviously you kind of agree on speakers, send out the invites, and you may have to do another round of discussion and invites. So we don't necessarily expect that every single speaker would be confirmed by that point, but we would expect that by then, at least the first round of invites has gone out, and hopefully you've received some confirmations. And we'll send out reminders. I think everyone has, each session has a meeting planned over the next week. So we'll send out reminders on all of that to make sure that that's in mind the next time that you meet. Are there any questions on that deadline or any other aspects of that? And the date is May 27th. Or are you asking for the date of the program?
Sorry, I gave the date of the program in the chat.
So the date that we're kind of looking for things to be like pretty concrete is 27th of May. So
submit a finished title or description prior to that. It'll help us with the promotional activities.
Yeah, I mean, if you can have it done next week, that's great. But earlier the better, and also not to make it a competition, but the earlier you confirm your speakers, the earlier you can kind of secure your spot on the schedule and get it locked in. So that's a little bit of an incentive there. So with that, why don't we do a quick lightning round of updates here on your session planning, understanding that there weren't any real deliverables since the last time that we met. So we'll just run down the line and get those updates. I'm just going to start calling people out. Jim, do you have an update on the security group that you'd like to share?
Sure, I do. Thanks much for getting us first, I guess. We've had a very good organizing session, actually. So I welcome for anyone else who was there to report on this. Jeff Bedser and I, as co-chairs, had done some prep work and created a bit of a proposal for how to approach our session here. The short version is just that we got some agreement that approaching it from the point of view of looking for that intersection of policy, technology, and intelligence, and observing that we want that sweet spot, which has all of the interoperability, collaboration, and cooperation that you really want for the best, security on the internet. You want to bring all those parts together. That if you think about Venn diagram of policy, technology, and intelligence, there's always good paths between all of the elements. But the real sweet spot you want is the middle, and that seems to be where the gap is. So we kind of have this framework, and we actually were able to jump into talking about potential speakers for the different parts of it. No definite commitment yet on speakers and who we're going to send invitations to, but we'll continue that discussion and hopefully come to closure soon. So I thought we had a pretty good step in the right direction here, at least within our group.
Great, thank you for that update, appreciate it. And I take the thumbs up, Jeff, as nothing to add.
Fully agree.
Cool, so let's see, moving around here. Anna, I know you weren't on the last call, and it sounds like there wasn't a full update for the connectivity group, but just wanted to confirm that before moving on past you.
Yeah, I don't think there's a full update. Before the last call, we already had a draft description written up, and we had already kind of set up a few ideas of the kinds of people that we would want to be on the panel. So yeah, we don't have any updates, but I think we're in a good spot.
Perfect, thanks, Anna. And then on the content moderation, Rick, do you want to give a quick update? It's your other mute button, Rick.
We were working on potential models and panelists. So we kind of have a list of different models to look at in terms of content moderation that we want to bring into the table. And obviously, depending on which ones we pick will be our speakers. So I'm hoping that the folks who are on our steering committee for this panel take a look at the document, because they're all listed there, and would be, use it to put comments in and thought processes and maybe links to something that we could read to get a better understanding. So our next call, we can finalize sort of those, because there are a bunch of them, so you won't be able to cover them all, but there's, just to try to get some of the ones that we think make the most sense.
Thanks, Rick. Mike, I don't know if you kind of fell into the de facto lead on the regulation and fragmentation one.
That's what happened. And I'm writing the summaries of each of these, and I think we should really think about trying to engage a lot of people in a discussion about the scenarios 2 or 3 weeks before the event, so that we can build a buzz. That's what we did 10 years ago when we used scenarios to that same effect. I think we're in pretty good shape. The only challenge is trying to find particularly effective trigger events, things that could really cause a change in the way governments and the public see the internet, and therefore change the goals, the policy goals. So, but right now we have these 4 different scenarios. One, and the question is, will we ever get back to 2010? When every app worked everywhere, you could get to every web page, no matter where you were. That was the goal then, and back then it was pretty true, except in China. And so we're looking forward to 2026 and saying, is the seamless web going to still work in most places? And will the Internet of Things be seamless across borders? And we look at how different policy goals could change that. So obviously, if you're concerned a lot about security and attacks on your systems, then there may be some lockdown attempts, not as far as China's gone, but Russia's got a kill switch now. Then there's an issue of content. The Indians have blocked all sorts of Chinese websites because they don't want Chinese content. And then there's privacy and concerns about data from a country being taken overseas and used in ways that aren't approved. So those were the three drivers we're looking at. The fourth one might very well be crime and the idea that the hackers have taken control. And that's different than security. It's about cyber fraud. It's about intellectual property theft. And so there's that might be the fifth scenario. But the idea is to have a very punchy, plausible scenario and to indicate how this could actually come to be. So it's not just describing how the world might be different and the net might be fragmented. It says, this is what could happen, and these are the tools that could be used to make it happen.
Thanks, Mike. Let's see.
And we're
So
meeting again on Monday, so I'll get some things around.
Great.
Oh, and actually,
Mike's been kind enough to do the first drafts for these, so
yeah. So.
We're also quiet. Just let him. He's working on it.
Well, I offered to do it, and I said, "Who's going to help?" And everybody offered to review. So I guess that's where we're at. Happy to do it.
Yeah, Mike. Even if you just did a rough draft, we can actually turn it into polished prose. But the idea was that each of the scenarios should have a consistency that you could enforce most easily with your first draft. You don't have to finish it before you share it for edits. Thanks.
I know. I took phase 2 of our honeymoon over the weekend, so we had a little time off. So bicycling in Lewis, Delaware.
Nice. Thanks, Mike. So I saw that Shane had to jump. I know the IoT group has moved pretty quickly and is already inviting speakers. I do see Paul on. So Paul, if you want to give an update.
Hi, everyone. As you mentioned, it's going really well. We've already agreed broadly on the topics, and I know that most of the speakers have already been confirmed, so we continue to make good progress.
Great, thanks, Paul. And then
just out of curiosity, is there one or two meta questions that you're answering? Or?
Oh, sure. So we're focusing on policy and standards. So we feel that you can't really separate these two because, I mean, insofar we're concerned about policy, it's about how is it that the different technical standards are going to shape policies in different parts of the world? Because all of the draft policy documents, both the voluntary ones and the ones that are more of a regulatory nature, whether it's in the US or the EU or in most jurisdictions across the world, they're all referring back to the technical standard that's being developed. So insofar you have the scientists develop the good work product that's going to serve as an input to the technical work, then that's inherently going to affect the implementation of the policy.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for that. And then on the antitrust, I think that's another one where there's no defined lead on that. So I'll defer to the whole group. I know I see Katie on and the designated pinch hitter, Chris and Anne as well. So whoever wants to chime in on that.
Yeah, hey, Katie here. We had a good conversation about kind of what the topics were going to be. I don't have it written out in front of me right now, but we were thinking about taking this a little bit of a different direction and possibly talking more about antitrust and how it's affecting other industries that also use the internet, like financial services. And I don't know if anybody else wants to kick in on that, but that was one of the things we were looking at.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Appreciate it. And then for digital identity, Michael, I don't know if you wanted to jump in on this one. I'm happy to do it as well. If you weren't
Why don't
kind of
you
already
go
thinking
ahead?
about it.
So Jeremy isn't on, I guess.
Oh, also Michael Plage is on as well. So I guess either Mike. But yeah, I'll go ahead and do it. So we're focusing on the question of why we don't have better digital identity, and then what could we do if we did. And so in that context, focusing on the barriers, I won't list all of them out, but have a good list going, and then thinking about what we want out of digital identity, what it would actually look like if and when it's realized, and then for the structure, we were considering a keynote, and since this topic is new to the IGF-USA, maybe not new to the participants, but it's a new topic that we're covering. So we want to start off with a brief primer, which we think Jeremy Grant, who will also be moderating, is best suited to provide. And then following the potential keynote and a primer, moving into just a kind of panel discussion, focusing on those questions that we have outlined, and in thinking about what speakers we wanted, looking at somebody from the private sector, either like a tech company like Microsoft or bank-related identity, to kind of see what's being done, and then looking at what's happening at the government level, whether we're talking about mobile driver license or something else, and then bringing in somebody from civil society to focus on how we can ensure inclusion in these processes. So that's kind of where we're at for that one. And then let's see, which ones have we not covered yet? We have privacy as well. I know that Lori's not on, and I know that they're meeting on Monday. Beth, you don't have to if you don't have anything at the moment, but if you have an update, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Dustin. Yeah, we'll be meeting on Monday. Lori is not able to lead, so I'll be leading Monday's call, and I think Ethan is going to pinch hit for the 24th. So we're sort of tag teaming just to support Lori. She's the main lead. We picked our title. We are brainstorming speakers. We've decided on kind of a scenarios approach, which I think is going to be good for this topic, especially considering, we do sort of want to talk about, from the title, it's the foundations of privacy legislation, and we don't want to have to change our approach depending upon what may or may not be introduced by the time we have an IGF-USA. So I think the scenarios approach is going to be really good, and everyone has been very helpful in contributing to those. So on Monday, we'll continue to build those out, and also brainstorm a few more panelists. That's it.
Cool. Thank you, Beth.
Anything? Other people are on this call or on that group too.
All right, well, I think you did a good job there, Beth. I think we can go on to the future of Mike, online markets and tech businesses. Apologies for that. But yeah, we're just looking at a session format that involves bringing in flash talks or lightning talks. I think also referred to them as elevator pitches, to bring in people that have kind of identified some issue with the way that markets were currently operating and implemented a technical solution to fix that, whether it's just, you know, connecting fans of particular artists so that they can support the work that they're doing, or whether we're talking about different fintech solutions. We're still figuring out exactly who we're inviting, but we'll follow up those. The idea is that we'll follow up those lightning talks with a break in the middle, and have short breakouts in probably the same room that we're using for our coffee breaks, where the people that have done the lightning talks will have 10-15 minutes to interact with attendees if they choose to, and then bring everybody back from the break and have a kind of more traditional panel type discussion that ties all of that together and talks about it at a higher level. There are others as well, and I think this one's also, we don't really have a clear defined lead on it, so if anyone else wants to add to that description, feel free.
I thought you did a great job.
Okay, cool. I think that is all of the updates that we need here.
Just on the fund committee, I did reach out to our friends at Host. So if folks, we want to have that conversation, some interesting ideas. So Dustin, I don't know when you want to schedule that conversation, but I think we have some interesting ideas, plus other ideas that people may have. Please submit them. This is just one of them.
Yeah, I'll send out with everything going on, this has been the one thing that kind of like fell through the cracks, but so apologies for that. Let me send out a doodle either tomorrow or early next week. If you would like to be on that, just go ahead and raise your hand. And we, already got the usual suspects, of course, myself, Melinda, Judith, Rick, and Mike. But if anybody else would like to be looped into that, just go ahead and raise your hand. And we'll add, Jonathan will add you to that as well. So thank you. Steve, I didn't know, I saw you pop up for a second, and I saw your post in the chat. So I wanted to give you a chance to speak if you'd like.
Yeah, it's ambitious to take people in the very first session where we don't even have all of our logistics worked out. We probably have a pretty good attendance because they came for a keynote. So after that, we put them into side rooms, people split up, then they come back, is that right? And then they stay in the main room to finish it out. So the logistics of that are a tiny bit tricky. And if the experience is the least bit jarring, it isn't a good way to start things off. That doesn't mean don't do it. It's just a sense of risk, because all of us have struggled from time to time with tools, especially if it's the first time we use a brand new tool like Lumio. So it's just a heads up. I'm not objecting. I don't want to get in the way. Thank you.
The other option we explored was actually having a parallel track where you have this interactive space and the person does the lightning talk, and people could immediately go and talk to that person for 3 minutes, for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes, at the expense of missing the other lightning talks. But if you hear something you're really excited about, you want to nail the speaker, that's another way to do it. But it would mean there'd be different conversations going on at the same time. But it would solve your problem, but it would also make it hard for people to hear everything they might want to hear. So that's the thing we're trying to get around. But we're trying to attract the CEOs of these companies, and the way to do that is to give them a quick opportunity to reach a big audience, get some publicity, and then interact with the people most excited about what they're doing. But this is, I mean, this isn't that much different than doing a poll by having people open another window. And, you know, I think the idea was to not have Zoom to Zoom, but to actually go to one of these virtual spaces. So you could conceivably, you could even leave the window, the Zoom window open, and, you know, get the transcript while hanging out in a virtual space with the CEO.
Yeah, but that's if the CEOs may want to hear the other CEOs too. So then they're stuck.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Yeah. So
I think most CEOs I know would rather hear themselves talk, particularly if the other guys taped.
But I think let's
we'll work it.
I think Steve makes a very important point, and I think we definitely want to kind of run through a dry run to make sure that whatever we're doing is not coming at the expense of the experience, but adding to it.
Well, the one thing that maybe is you do the lightning talks, and then if there is a break in between the next panel, then they could, and during that break, do what Mike is suggesting and say, hey, the CEO, because maybe some of the CEOs don't want to interact with people. I mean, we know those CEOs as well. And so but if there is a CEO who does want to interact during that next break, they can be in one of the rooms. And that way we're not ruining the flow.
And we had also discussed
Steve's point.
Yeah, and we had also discussed not just so people better understand what we're looking at, not just CEOs, but also people who have successfully used the platforms in some cases as well. So whether it's somebody who has successfully used Fiverr or somebody who's successfully used any one of these platforms to kind of share their experience in like an entrepreneurial way as well. But yeah, we'll figure all of that out. I promised you all a little bit of spare time, and I think we're at a good point to give that to you and keep that promise. So thank you all, and we'll look forward to seeing most of you on our different session planning calls next week. And I think probably we won't meet again as a steering committee for 3 weeks, right on cue for the deadlines that we have coming up. So
thank you to you.
Any other good ideas, send them in early. Any final descriptions, send those in early if you have them.
Right, and I'll see some of you in
a few
half an
minutes.
hour.
Yep. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.